Hi community of awesome, I'm Ava J and this is Bookish Pixie. So at some point or another after you finish first drafting, and you've probably already done a couple of revision rounds, the time will come to look at your manuscript and really pay attention to the words that you're using. In other words, the time will come to do line edits. I really enjoy line edits, and I've learned after editing many manuscripts, whether my own or my critique partners or friends or clients, that there are certain words that many of us use while we're first drafting that we don't really need in our manuscripts. These unnecessary words cause cluttered language or wordiness, which is basically when your sentences have way more words than they need to get the point across, and it starts to sound full, which then leads to awkward sentences, and basically it's something that you should clean up from your manuscript. So to help you guys out, today I'm going to talk about some common unnecessary words that you should look out for when revising your manuscript. Remember, you don't want to worry about this while first drafting because you don't want to worry about anything while you're first drafting, but when you're revising, these are good to look out for. And the final caveat, you don't need to get rid of every instance of these words in your manuscript, they're just often overused. Okay, so here we go. First, started to or began to. This is actually a great tip that my editor gave me. Basically, you rarely ever need to say something started to happen or began to happen. So instead of saying I started to cry, you could say I cried. Or instead of it starts raining, it rains. The reason you don't need to say starts to or began to is because when you write something has happened, that action begins when the reader reads it. So in other words, the character starts crying when the reader reads the character is crying. Or it starts raining out when the reader reads it's raining out. It's really that simple. Every word should carry a purpose, and if you don't need it, like starts to or began to, then you should get rid of it. Second, an action tag plus a dialogue tag. Quick overview, just in case you guys don't know what dialogue tags or action tags are. A dialogue tag is he said, she said, they said, whatever. An action tag is an action that comes before or after the dialogue. So, I don't want to, he slammed his fist on the table. He slammed his fist on the table is the action tag. Now the reason you don't need an action tag and a dialogue tag is because either one establishes who said what the dialogue was. So instead of saying, I don't want to, he said, slamming his fist on the table, you can use the example I gave earlier. I don't want to. He slammed his fist on the table. Third, that. Now that is a word that sometimes you need, like in that sentence. However, that is used way more than it needs to be used. So instead of saying, I knew that she was right, you could say, I knew she was right. Or, even better, if you're avoiding filtering like you should be, you could just say she was right. And in case you haven't seen my vlog on what filtering is and how you can avoid it, I'll link to that below. So basically, I recommend you go through your manuscript and do a search for that and make sure you need every single instance. And you'll probably find you don't need 7 out of 10 of them. Fourth, implied words. Implied words are words that, well, are implied. So for example, nodded their head, the implied is their head because you don't nod any other part of your body. 2 other frequent examples are sat down and stood up. In those examples, you don't need up or down unless you're switching them around. So for example, when you say someone sat, you usually mean they sat down. But if you mean they sat up, then you're going to want to use it. Same for standing. When you say someone stood, you usually mean they stood up. So you don't need to say up. But if you're saying they stood down, that means something different. And fifth, suddenly. Suddenly is another word that you rarely ever need to use. The reason you can mostly get rid of suddenly is because it's actually counterproductive. So for example, suddenly there was an explosion. The moment the reader reads suddenly, they know something's about to happen because you've warned them something's about to happen with suddenly. So you've ruined the suddenness of the moment. Whereas if out of nowhere in your manuscript you write, there was an explosion, that is sudden. So suddenly, this vlog is over. So that's what I got for today. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe and comment. And to my US viewers, happy Thanksgiving in advance. See you next week.